The great crystal dome of Nexus Prime glowed with soft blue light as representatives from across the galaxy gathered for the most important vote in 300 years. Senator Vex Tar of the Hegemony stood tall on his speaking platform, his scaled skin shining under the chamber lights. His voice carried clearly to every corner of the massive hall. "Fellow councilors," he began, his words flowing like honey mixed with poison. "Today we decide the fate of the most dangerous species ever to join our peaceful alliance." In the human section, Ambassador Sarah Kim sat quietly between her two colleagues. She wore a simple blue uniform that looked plain next to the exotic clothing and natural features of the other species. Her dark eyes watched Vextar carefully, already knowing what he would say. "These creatures call themselves humans," Vextar continued. "For 50 years, we have welcomed them with open arms. We gave them membership in our Senate. We allowed them to trade freely among our worlds. We shared our knowledge and our friendship." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. The crystalline architects chimed their approval with bell-like sounds. The energy beings called coordinators pulsed brighter. Even species that rarely spoke began to voice their support. And how do they repay our kindness? Vextar's voice grew louder, more angry. "They build military bases on every world they touch. They refuse to share their technologies with us. They explore beyond the borders we set for them. They breed like insects and spread across space without asking permission." Ambassador Kim felt her heart sink. She had seen this coming for months. The reports from human worlds were being twisted, made to sound threatening. Their defensive stations became military bases. Their scientific research became secret weapons. Their growing population became an invasion. "They are not like us," Senator Vextar said, pointing directly at the human section. "We evolved from prey animals, from creatures that learned to live together in peace. But look at them. Look at their eyes. They are predators from a death world, born to hunt and kill." The chamber erupted in nervous chatter. Many species had heard stories about Earth, the dangerous planet humans came from. Ice ages, massive predators, poisonous plants, deadly weather. How could anything good come from such a place? "I call for a vote," Vextar announced. "These humans must surrender completely to Senate authority, or we must declare them a threat to galactic peace. They have 7 rotations to choose." Quote, Vextar announced. Vextar announced. Ambassador Kim stood up slowly. Her legs felt weak, but her voice was steady when she spoke. "Honored counselors, may I respond to these charges?" A wave of whispers filled the chamber. Some species had never heard a human speak before. Senator Vextar nodded with fake politeness. "Of course, Ambassador. Please tell us why your species refuses to follow our laws." Sarah Kim looked around the huge chamber at the hundreds of alien faces watching her. Some looked curious, others afraid, many simply hostile. She took a deep breath and began to speak. "Counselors, everything Senator Vextar says is technically true, but he twists the meaning. Yes, we have defensive stations around our worlds. We built them to protect trade routes from pirates, not to threaten anyone. Yes, we explore beyond our assigned borders. We do this to find new worlds and resources that we freely share with everyone." She activated a small device, and holographic images appeared above her head. Star charts, trade records, exploration data, all proof of human contributions to galactic society. In 50 years, we have discovered 17 new habitable worlds. We have shared the locations freely. We have established trade routes that benefit every species. Our medical research has cured diseases that plagued the galaxy for centuries. We ask for nothing except the right to exist and grow like every other species here. But she could see it was too late. The decision had been made before the session even began. Too many species feared human success. Too many remembered their own failures, and saw humans as a reminder of their weakness. Senator Vextar smiled coldly. Pretty words, Ambassador. But words cannot hide the truth. Your species is different. Dangerous. We cannot allow you to threaten the peace we have built. The vote began immediately. One by one, species representatives cast their decision. The hegemony voted for war. The architects chimed their agreement. The coordinators pulsed red for conflict. Young species and old ones, prey animals and peaceful creatures, they all chose the same thing. Sarah Kim watched the vote count climb higher and higher. 100 votes for war. 200. 500. The numbers kept growing until only 3 votes remained against the declaration. 3 votes out of 847 species. The decision is final, announced the Senate Speaker, an ancient being whose species had founded the alliance. Humanity has 7 rotations to surrender completely or face total pacification. This session is closed. As the chamber began to empty, Sarah Kim walked slowly back to her quarters. Her hands shook as she activated the quantum communicator. The message she sent was short and simple, but every human leader would understand its meaning. Condition Omega. They have chosen extinction over coexistence. On Earth, President Chen received the message in her office deep beneath the Global Defense Center. She stared at the words for a long moment, then reached for a red phone that had never been used. When she spoke, her voice was calm but filled with steel. This is Phoenix Command. Authorization Delta 77. Begin Prometheus Protocol. Immediately. All hidden assets are now active. Repeat. All assets are now active. 18. All assets are now active. Across human space, things began to change. On farming worlds, vast underground complexes started to open. On mining colonies, factories revealed their true purpose. Around distant stars, space stations dropped their disguises and showed their real nature. The Senate thought they had declared war on a weak young species. They had no idea they had just awakened the most dangerous predator the galaxy had ever seen. For 50 years, humanity had prepared for this exact moment. They had hoped it would never come, but they were ready. The war the Senate wanted was about to begin, but it would not be the war they expected. News of the war declaration spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. On military bases throughout Senate space, commanders prepared for what they expected to be a quick and easy campaign. Fleet Admiral Corex of the Hegemony smiled as he watched the largest armada in galactic history gather around his flagship. 40,000 ships from 127 different species floated in perfect formation. Each vessel represented the best military technology their civilization could build. Corex had fought pirates, rebels, and rogue colonies, but never had he commanded such overwhelming force. Admiral, his tactical officer reported, intelligence estimates the humans have perhaps 200 ships total. Most of them are probably converted cargo vessels with basic weapons. Corex nodded. It seemed almost unfair. His armada could destroy 200 primitive ships in minutes. But the Senate had voted, and orders were orders. The humans would learn their place in the galaxy. On Earth, President Chen stood before the Global Defense Council in a chamber that officially did not exist. The men and women around the table represented humanity's greatest secret. They were the guardians of weapons and technologies that could reshape the galaxy. Citizens of humanity, she began. Her words broadcast through quantum networks to every human world. For 50 years, we have hidden our true strength. We accepted their insults, their restrictions, their treatment of us as children. We did this because we hoped for peace. Her image appeared simultaneously on screens across human space. In cities, in farms, in mining stations, in research facilities, everywhere humans lived and worked, they stopped to listen. Today that hope has died. They have chosen war over coexistence. They demand our extinction. Very well. Let them learn why Earth's children should never be underestimated. On New Geneva, farmers working in grain fields heard rumbling beneath their feet. The ground split open to reveal massive elevator platforms rising from hidden depths. What emerged made the farmers step back in shock. These were not storage silos or equipment sheds. These were automated shipyards that had been building in secret for decades. The ships that emerged were sleek and deadly, their hulls made from materials that seemed to bend light around them. The farmers realized their peaceful colony world had been hiding one of humanity's greatest military secrets right under their crops. On Kepler's promise, mining operations suddenly showed their true purpose. The ore processing facilities opened like flowers to reveal ammunition factories capable of producing millions of rounds per hour. The mining equipment transformed into weapon manufacturing systems that could build entire arsenal ships in days. Dr. Elena Vasquez worked frantically in her laboratory on Luna Station. For years, the Senate had praised her medical research program. They thought she was studying alien biology to help treat diseases and injuries. They were partly right, but they had missed the darker purpose of her work. Project Damocles is ready, she reported to President Chen through encrypted channels. We can target any species in the Senate specifically. The biological weapons will affect only their genetic structure, while leaving all other species completely safe. President Chen was quiet for a moment. Elena, you understand what you've created? Yes, Madam President. I've created the ability to end this war in hours. But if we use these weapons, we become the monsters they claim we are, Chen finished. Keep them ready, but I hope we won't need them. We have other options. The other options were already revealing themselves across human space. Admiral Sarah Morrison received activation codes for humanity's true fleet. Hidden bases throughout the Orion Arm began launching ships that had never appeared on any official records. The vessels that emerged defied everything the galaxy thought they knew about human technology. These ships moved without visible engines, changed direction in ways that should have been impossible, and carried weapons that seemed to manipulate the basic forces of physics. Morrison watched the tactical displays with satisfaction. The human fleet numbered 2.3 million vessels, each one more advanced than anything in the Senate's arsenal. They had been built slowly, secretly, using technologies developed in research stations disguised as farming worlds and mining colonies. How long until we're in position? She asked her chief of staff. All fleets will reach their assigned targets simultaneously in 18 hours, Admiral. Just as we practiced. Morrison nodded. They had practiced this scenario hundreds of times in secret simulations. Every human world, every human ship, every human soldier knew exactly what to do when Condition Omega was declared. The Senate thought they were fighting a disorganized collection of colonies. They were about to face a military machine that had been preparing for this war since the first humans stepped onto an alien world. Fleet Admiral Corex received the first sensor readings of the human response and immediately called for equipment checks. The numbers his officers were reporting made no sense. No species could hide such a massive military buildup. It had to be some kind of primitive deception. Perhaps holographic projectors or sensor jammers. Sir, his communications officer said nervously, we're receiving a transmission from the human fleet commander. Put it through, Corex ordered. He was curious to hear what pathetic threats the humans might make. A woman's face appeared on his main screen. She wore a simple uniform, but her eyes held the confidence of someone who had never lost a battle. When she spoke, her voice was calm and professional. Fleet Admiral Corex, I am Admiral Sarah Morrison of the Human Defense Forces. You have been ordered to attack human space with the intention of committing genocide against our species. I am therefore authorized to inform you that your armada will be destroyed completely unless you withdraw immediately. Corex laughed, and his bridge crew joined him. Admiral Morrison, you face 40,000 ships with the finest crews in the galaxy. You cannot possibly have the forces needed to threaten us. Morrison smiled, but there was no warmth in it. Admiral, you've made the same mistake your Senate made. You see what you expect to see, not what actually exists. You have exactly 1 hour to withdraw your forces and return to Senate space. After that, your survival is not our concern. The transmission ended, leaving Corex staring at a blank screen. The arrogance of these humans was astounding. Did they really think they could frighten him with empty threats? As both fleets moved toward their first battle at Crossroads Station, neither side fully understood what was about to happen. The Senate forces expected an easy victory over primitive weapons. The human fleet knew they were about to demonstrate why their species had survived ice ages, world wars, and extinction events before ever reaching the stars. The galaxy was about to learn that there was a difference between a species that had evolved in safety and one that had been forged in the fires of a death world. That lesson would be written in the wreckage of the finest fleet the Senate had ever assembled. The Battle of Crossroads Station began at exactly 0800 Galactic Standard Time and ended at 0817. 17 minutes was all it took to shatter 300 years of galactic military doctrine and prove that the Senate had made the greatest tactical error in recorded history. Fleet Admiral Corex watched his sensors with growing confusion as the human fleet approached. Instead of the ragged formation he expected from desperate defenders, he saw something that should not have been possible. 2.3 million ships moving in perfect coordination, their formations so precise they seemed to be controlled by a single mind. Captain Zhao Lin commanded the UHS Retribution, a dreadnought that existed in no Senate intelligence files. Her ship alone was larger than most of the vessels in Corex's armada, and it was just one of thousands of identical vessels in the human battle line. "Admiral Morrison, all fleets report ready," she announced calmly. "Awaiting your orders." Morrison's voice came back immediately. "Begin Operation Revelation. Show them who they chose to fight." What happened next broke every known law of space combat. Human ships began to phase in and out of normal space, appearing behind Senate vessels before they could react. Weapons that should not have existed tore through energy shields like they were made of paper. Gravity fields appeared from nowhere, crushing entire squadrons into miniature black holes. The crystalline architect vessel Eternal Harmony, pride of their species and believed to be unsinkable, suddenly went dark. Its quantum consciousness, which had existed for over 1,000 years, felt something it had never experienced before: pure terror. Human cyber warfare programs were rewriting its very thoughts in real time, turning the ship's own systems against its crew. "Impossible," the ship's mind screamed across quantum channels. "They're in my head. How are they in my head?" But there was no answer, only the steady advance of human ships that seemed to ignore the basic laws of physics. They moved faster than their engines should have allowed, changed direction without momentum, and fired weapons that bent space itself. Corex's tactical officer was shouting reports that made no sense. "Sir, they're using quantum manipulation. Their weapons are rewriting matter at the molecular level. They're not using our technology at all. All ships, concentrate fire on their flagship," Corex ordered desperately. If he could destroy their command ship, perhaps the others would fall into chaos. 1,000 Senate vessels turned their weapons on the UHS Retribution. Energy beams that could melt planets struck the human dreadnought directly. For a moment, Corex allowed himself to hope. Then the energy blasts simply vanished, absorbed by shields that converted the attacks into additional power for the human vessel. Captain Zhao Lin's voice came across all frequencies, calm and professional. "Thank you for the energy boost, Admiral. Now let us show you how weapons are properly used." The Retribution fired a single shot. The beam was so thin it was almost invisible, but when it struck Corex's flagship, the massive vessel simply ceased to exist. Not destroyed, not exploded. It was there 1 second, and gone the next, as if it had never been built at all. Panic spread through the Senate fleet faster than their ships could retreat. Crews abandoned their posts. Captains broadcast surrender offers, and entire squadrons fled without orders. In 17 minutes, the greatest armada in galactic history had been reduced to scattered survivors running for their lives. The few ships that escaped brought tales of impossible human technologies to Nexus Prime. Their reports sounded like madness, but the sensor records didn't lie. Humanity had achieved technological transcendence while pretending to be primitives. On Nexus Prime, emergency sessions convened as the full scope of the disaster became clear. The crystal dome that had witnessed 3 centuries of peaceful debate now echoed with screams of panic and rage. "This is impossible," Senator Vex Tar shouted, his earlier confidence replaced by desperate fear. "No species could hide such advanced technology. They must be using some kind of trick." But the ancient coordinators, beings of pure energy who had existed since the galaxy was young, pulsed with fear as they spoke. Not trick, not deception. True technological transcendence. They have achieved what we only theorized about. They can manipulate the fundamental forces of reality itself. Ambassador Sarah Kim, still present despite the war declaration, rose from her seat. The chamber fell silent as she activated a holographic display showing real-time positions of human fleets. Ships were moving toward every Senate world simultaneously, their approach steady and unstoppable. "Honored counselors," she said, her voice carrying a weight it had never held before. "You voted for war believing us to be weak. You demanded our extinction thinking we were helpless. You were wrong on both counts." The hologram showed human fleets approaching the homeworlds of every species that had voted for war. Their movement was coordinated across impossible distances, as if space itself bent to their will. "This war can end immediately with your unconditional surrender," Kim continued. "Or it can continue until human forces reach this chamber. The choice is yours. But choose quickly. My people are not known for their patience when their survival is threatened." "You're bluffing," Vextar screamed. "This is some elaborate deception. No one could develop such technology without us knowing." Kim smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Senator, you had 50 years to learn who we really were. Instead, you chose to see only what made you comfortable. You thought we were sheep because we didn't show our teeth. You declared war on humanity thinking we were prey animals. You have discovered that we are apex predators." The truth hit the chamber like a physical blow. For 50 years, every diplomatic mission had been intelligence gathering. Every trade agreement had mapped Senate infrastructure. Every cultural exchange had identified weaknesses. Humanity had been studying their enemies while pretending to be friends. "We gave you half a century to know us," Kim said quietly. "You chose to dismiss us as irrelevant. We are the species that tamed fire, split the atom, and survived our own attempts at self-destruction. Did you truly believe we would enter a galaxy full of potential threats without insurance?" The chamber erupted in chaos as species representatives screamed accusations at each other. The proud overlords, who hadn't retreated in 10,000 years, were already broadcasting evacuation orders for their homeworld. The energy beings who claimed to understand all technology admitted they had never seen anything like human capabilities. Through it all, Ambassador Kim stood quietly, watching the civilization that had dismissed her species crumble under the weight of their own arrogance. The war they started to prevent human dominance had revealed that human dominance was already inevitable. They just hadn't been told yet. As human fleets closed in on Senate core worlds, the question was no longer whether humanity would win. The question was whether any of the 847 species that voted for human extinction would survive their own mistake. The galaxy was about to learn that there were consequences for threatening the survival of Earth's children. And those consequences were about to arrive with the precision and overwhelming force that only humanity could deliver. Human fleets arrived at Senate core worlds with the precision of clockwork and the inevitability of death itself. What the galaxy witnessed in the following days would redefine their understanding of warfare, technology, and the price of underestimating apex predators. On Hegemony Prime, Senator Vex Tar stood in his private tower, watching orbital defenses that had protected his world for 1,000 years crumble like sandcastles. The massive defense platforms, each one capable of destroying a moon, simply stopped working. Their weapons turned to target their own cities. Their shields collapsed, and their crews abandoned their posts in terror. "This is Captain Singh of the UHS Inevitable," came a calm transmission that reached every communication device on the planet. "Citizens of Hegemony Prime, you have 1 hour to evacuate all military installations and government centers. We take no pleasure in this action, but you chose extinction over coexistence." Vextar's hands shook as he tried to contact his military commanders. Half of them didn't respond. The other half reported the same impossible story. Their ships and weapons were no longer under their control. Human cyber warfare programs had rewritten their computer systems so completely that the technology no longer recognized its original owners. Across the galaxy, similar scenes played out on every world that had voted for war. The crystalline architect homeworld watched in horror as human quantum manipulation began literally rewriting their crystal cities at the molecular level. Buildings that had stood for millennia started changing shape, their crystal matrices restructured according to human design. The energy-based coordinators discovered that human technology could interact directly with their consciousness. For the first time in their existence, beings of pure energy found themselves trapped in containment fields they could not phase through or escape. On Nexus Prime, the Senate emergency session had descended into complete chaos. Species representatives screamed accusations at each other, desperately proposed surrender terms, and begged for mercy from forces they could not comprehend. Dr. Elena Vasquez watched the reports from her laboratory on Luna Station. The biological weapons she had created remained unused and unnecessary. Humanity's psychological warfare was proving far more effective than any toxin could be. "Admiral Morrison," she reported through secure channels. "Preliminary analysis shows complete psychological breakdown across all major Senate species. They're not just militarily defeated. They're culturally shattered. Many are questioning their entire understanding of reality." Morrison's response was grim. "That was always the risk, Doctor. When you base your entire civilization on the assumption of superiority, discovering you're not superior tends to break more than just military morale." The human approach was methodical and terrifying in its precision. They didn't randomly destroy cities or slaughter civilians. Instead, they systematically dismantled every symbol of Senate power with surgical accuracy. Government buildings were emptied and sealed. Military installations were captured intact. Communication networks were taken over and used to broadcast human messages. Most disturbing of all, they did this while providing detailed explanations of exactly how they were doing it. Human broadcasts showed step-by-step breakdowns of Senate technology, complete analysis of their tactical failures, and demonstrations of how easily their advanced weapons could be countered. Fleet Admiral Morrison personally led the assault on the hegemony capital. Her forces didn't just defeat their enemies. They turned each battle into a humiliating lesson on the difference between assumed and actual superiority. "Attention Hegemony Defense Fleet," she broadcast during the siege of their primary naval base. "You are attempting a pincer movement with your 3rd and 7th squadrons while keeping your 1st squadron in reserve. This is textbook strategy from your military academy. Unfortunately, we wrote better textbooks." Human ships began demonstrating tactics that Senate commanders had never seen before. They used gravity wells as shields, phase-shifted through solid matter to attack from impossible angles, and coordinated attacks across multiple dimensions simultaneously. "Your weapons are designed to penetrate conventional shields," Morrison continued calmly, as she watched hegemony ships fire uselessly at her fleet. "Our shields convert your energy attacks into additional power for our systems. You are literally making us stronger with every shot." The psychological impact was devastating. Senate crews began abandoning their posts rather than face the humiliation of contributing to their own defeat. Entire battle groups surrendered without firing a shot. Back on Nexus Prime, Ambassador Kim watched the Senate's final emergency session with something approaching pity. The proud beings who had voted for human extinction now huddled together like frightened children, begging for mercy from the species they had tried to destroy. "Please," Senator Vex Tar whispered, his earlier arrogance completely gone. "We didn't know. We thought you were primitives. We made a mistake. Surely you can understand that." Kim's response was measured and cold. "Senator, you had 50 years to learn who we were. Instead, you chose to see only what confirmed your prejudices. You declared war on humanity believing we were sheep. You discovered we are wolves." She activated a holographic display showing the current status of Senate worlds. Military resistance had collapsed everywhere. Governmental authority existed only where humans allowed it to continue. Civilian populations were being relocated to temporary protective zones for their own safety. "But this is genocide!" screamed the representative from the overlord species. "You're destroying our entire civilization!" "No," Kim replied quietly. "Genocide was your plan for us. This is justice. You voted 844-3 for our extinction. We are simply ensuring that such a vote can never happen again." The truth was even more devastating than the military defeat. Humanity hadn't just hidden their technology. They had been planning for this exact scenario since their first contact with galactic civilization. Every embassy had been an intelligence station. Every trade mission had mapped defense networks. Every cultural exchange had identified psychological weaknesses. "We spent 50 years hoping you would accept us as equals," Kim continued. "We prepared for war while praying for peace. You forced us to choose between your survival and ours. We choose ours." By the end of the fourth day, 847 species had been reduced to refugees dependent on human mercy for their continued existence. The government that had ruled the galaxy for 3 centuries existed only in emergency bunkers, sending surrender offers that went unanswered. The Senate had thought they were swatting an annoying insect. Instead, they had awakened apex predators who had been patiently waiting for an excuse to claim their rightful place as the galaxy's dominant species. The vote they cast so confidently had become their species' death warrant. Signed in their own arrogance and sealed with human technological superiority, the war was effectively over. What came next would determine whether galactic civilization would survive under new management or simply fade into history as a cautionary tale about the dangers of underestimating Earth's children. 3 weeks after the Senate's declaration of war, Ambassador Sarah Kim walked through the ruins of the Nexus Prime Capitol building. Her footsteps echoed in chambers where the galaxy's most powerful beings had once made decisions affecting trillions of lives. Now those same beings waited in detention facilities, reduced to war criminals awaiting judgment. The building still stood, but its meaning was gone forever. The crystal dome that had witnessed 3 centuries of galactic democracy was cracked, its blue light flickering weakly. Human engineers were already planning its replacement with something more practical and far more secure. President Chen materialized beside Kim through quantum transport technology that made even human allies nervous. Together, they surveyed the remnants of the civilization that had tried to destroy them. "Final reports are complete," Chen said quietly. 847 species, 12,000 inhabited worlds, 4.2 trillion beings now under human administration. Total human casualties, 0. Kim nodded grimly. They made it too easy. 50 years of studying their weaknesses while they dismissed us as irrelevant. They handed us the blueprint for galactic conquest and asked us to build our own cage. The transformation happening across the galaxy defied every prediction the Senate had made about human nature. Humans didn't enslave their former enemies or exterminate entire species out of revenge. Instead, they implemented something far more devastating to the old order: competent leadership. Worlds that had suffered under corrupt Senate administrators found themselves with efficient infrastructure, fair resource distribution, and actual representation in government. The Terran Protectorate wasn't the brutal empire many expected. It was everything the Senate had pretended to be, but never achieved. Former Senator Vex Tar sat in his detention cell when an unexpected visitor arrived. Captain Singh, whose fleet had conquered Hegemony Prime, entered alone and sat across from the broken senator. Vex Tar expected mockery or torture, but Singh's expression showed only sadness. "We didn't want this," Singh said quietly. "Humanity spent 50 years trying to find a peaceful path forward. We hoped you would eventually accept us as equals, rather than threats. We never intended to rule the galaxy." Vex Tar looked up with hollow eyes. "Then why? Why reveal your true power now? Why not continue the pretense?" Because you forced our hand," Singh replied. "You declared our extinction. Not subjugation, not taxation, not restriction. Complete elimination. We couldn't let that stand. No species can." Singh paused, studying the defeated alien. "Your people have a choice now. Adapt to a galaxy where competence matters more than age, where results matter more than reputation, or cling to your old beliefs and watch your species fade into irrelevance. Choose wisely." Across human space, integration proceeded with efficiency that disturbed even human observers. Species that accepted the new reality found themselves prospering beyond their wildest dreams. Advanced human medical technology extended lifespans across the galaxy. Educational programs freely shared knowledge that the Senate had hoarded for centuries. Worlds that had lived in poverty for millennia suddenly had access to post-scarcity economics. But resistance was met with absolute force that left no room for misunderstanding. Overlord remnants who attempted guerrilla warfare discovered that human countermeasures were both immediate and permanent. Entire rebel fleets simply vanished from existence, leaving only recorded warnings broadcast to discourage other resistance movements. Dr. Elena Vasquez oversaw the reconciliation centers where former Senate leadership underwent cognitive realignment. The process wasn't brainwashing. It was something far more sophisticated, humane. "We're not changing who they are," she explained to concerned human officials. "We're giving them the wisdom they should have developed naturally over centuries. It's more merciful than execution and more effective than imprisonment." Participants retained their memories and personalities but gained genuine understanding of their past mistakes and how to avoid repeating them. Former enemies emerged as productive citizens of the new galactic order, their talents redirected toward constructive purposes. The galaxy adapted with surprising speed. Species that initially mourned their lost independence soon realized they were living better lives under human governance than they ever had under Senate bureaucracy. Children grew up learning human languages alongside their native tongues, not from oppression, but from genuine desire to access human knowledge and opportunity. Ambassador Kim, now Governor General of the Terran Protectorate, addressed the first session of the new Galactic Assembly. Representatives from all 847 species attended, but the power structure was crystal clear. Humanity led, others followed or faded into irrelevance. "The war you declared was meant to prevent human dominance," she said, her words carried to every world in the galaxy. Instead, it revealed that dominance was already inevitable. "We offered partnership in building a better civilization. You chose to make yourselves subjects in the one we built without you." The new assembly hall was smaller than the old Senate chamber, but far more functional. Representatives sat in mixed groups rather than species blocks, encouraging cooperation over tribal loyalty. Every decision was backed by human analysis and oversight, ensuring efficiency the old Senate had never achieved. "We offer you one final choice," Kim continued. "Embrace this new reality and prosper within it, or cling to the past and watch your species become footnotes in human history books. Choose carefully. We will not offer this choice again." The response was immediate and unanimous. Every species representative stood and formally accepted human leadership. The vote was 800 and 47 to 0. A perfect reversal of the declaration that had started the war. In her private chambers that night, Governor Kim sometimes wondered if humanity's victory had been too complete, too devastating. The Senate's resistance had lasted less than a month. Their entire civilization had been replaced before most citizens even understood what was happening. But then she remembered the original vote. 844 to 3 for human extinction. She recalled the arrogance in Senator Vextar's voice, as he described humans as dangerous parasites. She thought about the children who would have never been born if the Senate's plan had succeeded, and she felt no regret for giving them exactly the war they had demanded. The galaxy was quiet now, more peaceful than it had been in centuries. Trade flowed freely between worlds. Scientific knowledge advanced at unprecedented rates. Conflicts were resolved through human mediation, rather than warfare. The Senate's reign had lasted 300 years. Their war against humanity had lasted 23 days. The Terran protectorate they tried to prevent would endure for millennia, built on the foundation of their own spectacular failure to understand the species they had chosen to fight. In the end, the Senate had been right about one thing. Humans were different from every other species in the galaxy. They had just been catastrophically wrong about what that difference meant. Humans weren't dangerous because they were predators. They were dangerous because they were survivors who had learned that sometimes the only way to ensure peace was to be strong enough to make war impossible for your enemies. The galaxy was finally safe. Safe under human protection, human guidance, and human law. And it would remain safe as long as Earth's children watched over it.